Let's talk about parent facilitation. What is it and when should you consider it for your case? We actually have a statute now in Texas that allows a court to appoint a parent facilitator. Typically, parent facilitators are mental health professionals, sometimes they're lawyers, and they serve in a role in high conflict cases. So, how do you know if you have a high conflict case? Well, if you are filing lots of pleadings and calling your lawyer every day, you probably qualify as a high conflict case. And in those cases, we're finding that the courts are not always the best place to resolve all of their issues, and thus the creation of the parent facilitator. A parent facilitator is an individual that is appointed by the court. There's usually an individual order that appoints them. It lays out their duties, the rights that they have. It explains how they're going to be compensated, and it orders the parties to cooperate and show up for the parent facilitation. Typically, parent facilitation occurs with both parties and the parent facilitator for an hour or two session at a time. It can be on a regular basis or as needed. Either party can call and say, oh, we need a parent facilitation session. And the parent facilitator is given some duties and rights and the ability to report to the court. It is not confidential, and that's huge because we have what's called parent coordination, which is confidential. But parent facilitation is not confidential, and the parent facilitator can report to the court whenever they think it's appropriate. And that's a nice little whip if somebody isn't acting right, to be able to say, I'm going to have to report to the judge, and helps people get in line. It also creates a witness. So if one person is always the problem, which is seldom the case actually, usually both parties are a little bit of the problem, but if one person is always the problem, I would like, as the lawyer, if I have the good player in the case, I would like to have that witness be able to testify in a future hearing that the other party is always the problem. So I view it as a plus because as a lawyer, it's either going to help the parties resolve their differences, which is a plus, or it's going to create a witness for me to explain to the judge who the problem is. Because in a hearing or in a trial, you have limited time for the judge to hear from everyone and understand what's really going on. And someone may be able to fake it in that hearing or in the trial because they're on the stand for such a limited time. But they can't really fake it with the parent facilitator because the parent facilitator has a lot more exposure to them. So what are the types of things that a parent facilitator might help with? An example would be that they have a decree of divorce, I'm assuming at this point, or maybe a paternity order. So this is usually after orders are in place. Not always. Sometimes it's while the case is pending. But often they already have an order. Maybe it's a temporary order even. But they're still having a dispute about summer. They don't want to follow the order because there's this special camp that the child always goes to, or this year Easter fell on top of spring break and nobody thought about that, so it's not addressed in the order, and they're having a dispute about that. They don't agree. They both want the child at the same time, or one of them wants the child to go to the camp and the other doesn't. So how do they handle that? That is the type of thing the parent facilitator will help them with. Now, the parent facilitator doesn't get to make the decision. They are not empowered to change the orders of the court. But they are skilled, trained professionals who can help walk these people through these difficult issues for them and help them to get on the same page. They will also be, as they're working through these issues, teaching the parents how to be better co-parents. By modeling and by giving them specific assignments, they will be showing them what is appropriate co-parenting and what's not. Because sometimes people, they even have good intentions, they just lack skills. They don't know how to communicate effectively. They don't understand that it's not appropriate to put the stepmom on all the emergency forms as the mom and not to write the mom down. They don't understand the impact of that. And the mom telling them the impact of that doesn't go over well. But when you have a neutral parent facilitator who can explain, you know what, that's really not appropriate. You can have the stepmom on there as a additional contact, but the parent should be listed first. That kind of puts an end to it. It also helps that parent, if they're in a power struggle with their new spouse. Sometimes the new spouse is a big help, but sometimes they're not. And when they're not, the parent can kind of get stuck in the middle between their new spouse and their old spouse. So the parent facilitator can help them by empowering them to go home and say, oh, parent facilitator said not appropriate to list you as mom on the emergency contact and not list mom. So some of the issues that come up in divorce living, the parent facilitator can help them get through, and they don't have to go to the extremes of filing a lawsuit every time. We're finding parent facilitation as a community to be very effective and very helpful if people will participate. It's a problem, obviously, if somebody doesn't participate. If they won't show up and participate, it's not going to help the situation at all. One thing that parent facilitators often will also do is they'll ask everyone to sign HIPAA releases, and often the order will require that. So the parent facilitator can talk to counselors involved with the family. Maybe there's a counselor for the child or for the children, and if the parent facilitator can talk to that counselor, it can really help. Now you kind of have a team helping the family. Maybe there's counselors seeing both of the parents. Maybe there's a parent who is having a relationship problem with one of the kids and we're trying to repair that. The parent facilitator can suggest resources for people to do reconciliation work in that instance, and can speak freely with those HIPAA releases to those counselors. And then you really have a great team that's trying to help the family, and in the end, it's a huge benefit to the kids. So I recommend considering parent facilitation for your case, and if your lawyer hasn't suggested it, maybe you should suggest it to your lawyer.